Vivarium is one of my favourite movies. It's definitely in my top 5, wedged comfortably between Garfield and Garfield 2, A Tale of Two Kitties. But for some reason, in the wider world of film discourse and pop culture, I don't ever see it getting talked about. Vivarium, not Garfield. Garfield discourse is thriving. Vivarium had a budget of €4 million, and according to the pesky meddler of truth that is the internet, it only brought a return of 400k. I don't think it had the best promotion. I personally only discovered the film because during the end credits of Parasite, following that heartbreaking moment of realization, I got, hey, if you enjoyed this wacky movie, you might enjoy Capitalism Makes Me Sad, Volume 2. Most people I know haven't watched the film, and those who have seem to compare it to Parasite a lot. Maybe they work at Amazon Prime, pushing films about how the working class are being exploited onto me as they secretly piss in bottles under the stairs. Working at Amazon Prime will give you piss denial. It's in the small print. I tend to have a bit of a knee-jerk reaction when people draw links between Parasite and Vivarium, and I could be reductionist and say their similarities start and end at capitalism equals the world is sad and so am I, but I think there is something very interesting in looking at Vivarium as Parasite's spiritual sister. And no, the thesis of this video isn't going to be about how Vivarium isn't Parasite, because all you have to do is look at the title. Look, they're different movies. But I think the fact that they deal with very similar topics and explore those topics through similar subtexts, plural, is that right? Is worth looking at. Both films explore how working people are exploited within a system that is in place to make sure they never succeed, and how success is so extremely rare unless you are essentially born into a part of that system that essentially gives you a fast pass Disneyland ticket to, I don't know, playing outside in a tent. Never has a film made me hate a little boy having fun more. I mean, if we look at Parasite, it is pretty blatant with its criticism of class divide and how everything just sucks and is really unfair. I mean, the poor people literally live with their struggles and pain unseen underground like fucking mole rats and remain there by the end of the film. Only one of them is now dead and the other is avoiding a lengthy prison sentence. This system clearly does not care for the human experience, and everyone below this level of wealth is essentially there to serve. Even staff that have supposedly been with the family for years are fired at the drop of a hat for the most minor of unconfirmed misdemeanors because they have no personal connection. They are not people, they are staff. Thank God for the rain. Technology is worrying, it worries me. Okay, so maybe we should actually talk about Vivarium now. I am quite easily distracted. This film tackles the same subject matter and does it in an equally creative and effective way where it actually makes me angry someone constructed such a fantastic piece of work, because why can't I do something that good, mother? Obviously, Vivarium deals with this subject matter in a very different way, and I mean, it kind of has to, because it exists in a different culture. Like any selfish and uncultured individual, shit hits harder when I see it in my back garden, because it's set in the West. It taps into this idea of the nuclear family that is very familiar to me. I know people and have a relationship with what Vivarium is depicting more directly. I grew up in a country and culture shaped by what this film is criticizing, so it just packs more of an emotional punch. Not that I don't care about this poor woman, but you get what I mean? I'm just going to have to assume you do, because this is a sort of one-way conversation we're having, so, I mean, I guess you'll just have to live with it. In Vivarium, our two central characters are looking for a house to move into and presumably level up to the next stage in their life. Kids, company barbecues, etc. I mean, what else do people do? I genuinely am struggling to think of what normal human beings do on a daily basis. They end up locked inside a forever maze of new build houses and are unable to escape. They are given a freak child, trademark, to care for, only to be released when they have successfully brought it up. They comply, suffer horribly, and die before they can enjoy the fruits of their labor and be free once again from their burdens. And in a sick, ironic monkey paw kind of way, they get exactly what they wanted at the start of the film. It just turns out that it sucks. The most horrifying thing about this thriller to me is that it's a pretty authentic look at the Western living experience. They're not exposed to any objective atrocities in this film, they're just living under capitalism. They achieve their goal, they get a house, the perfect house actually, a dream Cat in the Hat house, and they're trapped. They sign away their freedom in a trade-off for what they're told the perfect life is. They're quite comfortably looked after, they have a nice house to live in, but they feel isolated from the outside world. They get food delivered to them in bulk, but it tastes processed and devoid of flavour, almost as though it's not actually real food that they're eating. It's as plastic and synthetic as the world they're living in.
You can make it just before dessert time, while the children are clearing the table. Or let the children make it themselves. It's that easy. New Jell-O instant puddings are at your grocer's now. Stock up with a terrific new Busy Day dessert.
You get a kid you didn't really want, you're just told this is what you have to do, so you bring that kid up. You begin to feel resentful of the child, even abusive. Your sex life and relationship with your partner begins to grow as stale as everything else as you grow tired of this world that has been constructed and laid out for you. You're depressed and fed up with this shit because you never had a say in your own destiny. Your child watches a form of media and education you hardly understand, always on in the background and molding their brains in a way you could never do, and like everything else, you have no say in how this child is slowly and systemically indoctrinated by some creepy and invisible power you have never met and you never will. And I guess you could pull them away from the television and try to teach them things yourself, but you're so fucking tired, why even bother? Just let the television do the work. Much like the cuckoo bird at the start of this movie, clever, me being clever, the child becomes a form of parasite. It's not yours, you have no control, not even of your own kids. Yeah, that's ours now, that's our child, thanks for bringing him up, we'll take it from here, sir. You're forced to work in order to escape, constantly digging away at a freedom you know you're never going to fully achieve, but that's okay because this work is a distraction, a way to zombify your brain so you don't have to pay attention to the miserable reality that is your wife, your kid, your house, your fucking life. You experience brief, fleeting moments of happiness as you recall your life before all of this, before you were trapped. And then, as you finally exhaust yourself to death, you spend whatever time you have left lamenting the days you were free, and then you die. You die without having achieved anything you wanted to. You're dead. Thanks for your service. Bye-bye. And then the next generation take over, perpetuating the continuation of this world, becoming deeper entrenched in a part of the system that has caused so much misery and pain. Vivarium doesn't have to try very hard to engineer a version of reality that makes you feel suffocated and trapped, which is the scariest and strongest thing about the entire film, in my opinion. The two main protagonists don't have especially striking personalities. We don't ever get too much of a sense as to who they are. Even in their moments of reflection as to how they met, their story is pretty generic. They met at a party and then started dating. It's a pretty broadly recognizable and maybe even generic on-screen relationship, but I think that works to the film's advantage and is maybe intentional. The only comparison I can think of, weirdly, is Twilight, and how Bella is pretty much a blank slate of sorts in the book so that the reader can project themselves onto her and live out that teenage fantasy. Vivarium uses this cardboard cutout couple so that their experience feels universal. You can put yourself in their shoes because most of us are already there. Only instead of injecting yourself into a fantasy world, you're in a slightly more bleak version of reality. We're living in a generic world with plastic food and plastic houses and
another cloud-shaped cloud. All the clouds here are shaped like clouds. Perfect.
So it only makes sense to inject a pretty generic couple in there too. Characters with more energy and life to them that actively go against the grain of what a normal, boring white suburban family is supposed to look like and reject the social and systemic norms would be a very different movie. You could argue that this couple is compliant in a way, and that's not to say Jesse Eisenberg, Miss Poots, or any other of the cast don't do a good job, because they do. They nail the mission statement, which I guess is to be a bit boring. I just think that Vivarium is a super creative film with a lot of different layers and ways to read into it, because there's also a whole argument to be made about the creepy estate agents that are essentially running and benefiting off this system and how they're presented like weird reptilian aliens. It creates a lot of interesting conversation, and there's always something you can spot on a rewatch that went amiss in the first viewing, and it's also very funny.
It's just this place is making me crazy. The food here makes me feel sick.
Creepy little mutant.
And that's pretty much all I have to say. I just wanted to give an overview of how I read the film and why I think it's pretty neat. I also want to know what other people thought of this film, because I don't see it getting discussed all too much. So leave your little thinks down in the comments. Thanks for watching. Bye.